I am currently 25 years old, and my boyfriend is 26. Our journey together began when I was just 18 and he was 19. Over the years, we have shared many experiences and milestones, including our decision to move in together after he graduated from college, following 3.5 years of dating. This transition into cohabitation has enriched our relationship tremendously, allowing us to deepen our connection and grow together as both partners and best friends. Our relationship is characterized by a strong romantic bond, built on love, respect, and shared values. I have strong feelings for him and realistically envision a future where we are married and possibly raising children together. While I had a personal expectation of being engaged by now, I completely understand and respect his desire to achieve a level of stability and personal growth before we make such a significant life commitment. Recently, a new colleague named Jay joined our workplace, and I was tasked with orienting and training him. Jay has an interesting background as a former professional athlete and is in exceptional physical shape. However, there is an intriguing aspect to his personal life that complicates things. He is married, and he and his wife have chosen to pursue an open marriage. They have a child together, conceived during a time when Jay's wife was still married to another man. Additionally, she maintains intimate relationships with her ex-husband, which adds layers to their family dynamic. During our discussions, Jay openly shared details about his marriage, which left me feeling quite taken aback. The situation felt unconventional to me, especially regarding his wife's ongoing relationship with her ex. When the topic of open relationships came up, Jay sought my opinion. I was candid in my response, firmly stating that I would never want to share my partner or be involved with anyone else. The discussion concluded with Jay suggesting that I might reconsider my stance on the matter in the future, a comment that caught me off guard, prompting a lighthearted laugh from me as I redirected the conversation elsewhere. As our working relationship evolved over the following weeks, I found myself increasingly physically attracted to Jay. This unexpected attraction led to some playful flirting between us, raising significant concerns about the direction this could take. I have chosen not to discuss any of this with my boyfriend, fully aware that he would likely react negatively and end our relationship on the spot. Although he is not overly possessive, he firmly believes in traditional relationship dynamics, where commitment is strictly between one man and one woman. Even a hint of flirting could severely damage the trust we have built. Given this situation, I decided it would be worthwhile to broach the subject of open relationships with my boyfriend, aiming to understand his perspective without revealing my current feelings towards Jay. For those who have navigated similar situations, I have some specific inquiries. How did you initiate this type of conversation? What language did you use, and what were the outcomes for your relationship? Did it lead to positive changes or further complications? In my attempt to discuss this topic, I initially approached it indirectly through the mention of Jay. I explained that Jay is a new colleague and recounted how some coworkers noted his open marriage and his wife's ongoing intimacy with her ex-husband. The moment I raised this, my boyfriend's reaction was immediate and filled with disdain. He firmly asserted that Jay was foolish for accepting such an arrangement, arguing that no man would willingly allow his partner to engage closely with another man. His remarks about Jay's wife were equally unkind and judgmental. I responded by laughing and agreeing with his perspective, skillfully steering the dialogue to a different subject. At this point, it is evident that my desire for intimacy with Jay is unlikely to materialize, at least for the foreseeable future. For now, I intend to focus on our shared home life and activities to manage the intense feelings I am experiencing within myself. In a subsequent update that relates to these developments, I must address a significant mistake I made that has ultimately jeopardized my relationship with my boyfriend and shattered my dreams of marrying him and starting a family. As previously mentioned, my boyfriend rejected the idea of an open relationship, and I made the decision not to pursue it any further. However, a week later, he traveled to Chicago for a trade show, leaving me alone from Tuesday through Thursday that week. On a Tuesday morning, Jay and I found ourselves engaged in playful flirtation at the office, an interaction that felt lighthearted and thrilling amidst our professional surroundings. As the day progressed, the chemistry between us intensified, leading to a decision during our lunch break that would come to haunt me. We ended up at his apartment, where our flirtation escalated into intimacy. In the aftermath, I was left with a heavy heart, filled with regret for my choices. The feelings of foolishness and selfishness crept in like an unwelcome shadow, casting doubt on my actions. When Thursday arrived, I found myself repeating the same pattern with Jay. Although the physical aspects of our encounters were undeniably enjoyable, they quickly became overshadowed by the emotional connection I cherish with my boyfriend. Jay's physical appeal was there, but it was clear that he lacked the deeper bond one have cultivated with my partner. This contrast made our intimate moments feel ultimately unfulfilling and left me longing for the connection I had taken for granted. After our last meeting on Thursday, I resolved silently that it should be the end of our escapades, yet I refrained from expressing this to Jay. I wanted to spare his feelings, even if it meant continuing to tread a path of uncertainty. An unexpected aspect of my encounters with Jay was the stark condition of his apartment. Upon entering, I was taken aback by the chaotic environment filled with cluttered exercise equipment and clothes strewn about haphazardly. The disorganized atmosphere was a jarring contrast to the neatness and orderliness that my boyfriend and I maintained in our own living space. This disarray not only distracted me but also detracted from the intimacy I sought, amplifying my sense of unease. When Thursday drew to a close, the dynamics of my relationship with my boyfriend shifted dramatically. I returned home to find him standing by the door, wrapped in his coat, clutching his car keys. I was eager to greet him affectionately, anticipating a warm kiss and embrace, but instead, he pushed me away, creating an immediate rift between us. It was then that he delivered news that left me feeling crushed. He had received a message on social media from Jay's wife. She had reached out to him with the intention of meeting up and possibly dating, having learned about my involvement with Jay. My heart sank as he detailed how she revealed our entire situation, including her and Jay's preference for being with other couples, which they both seemed to enjoy. The weight of this revelation was almost too much to bear. Overwhelmed, I needed to sit down as the gravity of the situation seeped in. I attempted to explain my actions and apologize sincerely, but he dismissed my words, handing me an eviction notice he had prepared online. He informed me that I had 30 days to vacate the premises before he would take legal action, emphasizing that he would be staying with his parents and instructing me not to contact him. The finality of his words hit me like a hammer, and the tears began to flow uncontrollably. I reached out to him one more time, desperate to bridge the chasm that had formed, but he wouldn't let me near him. With a hurried motion, he left, driving away quickly while I stood helplessly behind. For the next 3 hours, I found myself in a state of distress, trying to reach him with no success. I even called his mother to inquire whether he was at her house, giving me a glimmer of hope. She confirmed he was there but said he couldn't take my call. When I asked if I could come over to talk, her response was cold and unequivocal. I was no longer welcome. Her words cut deep, leaving me feeling utterly devastated. I tried to convey my regret and plea for understanding, but she merely acknowledged my presence without engaging further, ending the conversation with a dismissive farewell. Take care and have a nice life. The rest of the night was tormented by feelings of misery and guilt. I bombarded my boyfriend with texts, pouring out my heart in a way that seemed excessive in hindsight. I apologized repeatedly, professed my love for him, and insisted he was my one true love. I tried to communicate that my physical involvement with Jay was meaningless, a moment of weakness that paled in comparison to the depth of my feelings for him. I aimed to lift his spirits, hoping it would somehow prompt him to reach out, but my efforts were in vain. On the following day, I drove to his office, my heart racing with anticipation. Although I couldn't bring myself to go inside, I texted him to let him know I was waiting in the parking lot, determined to stay there all day until I could speak with him. Despite my hopes, he did not reply. However, around 11 in the morning, I spotted him walking toward my car. As I gazed upon his handsome face, the sight stirred a wave of emotions within me, bringing tears to my eyes. My love for him was profound, igniting a sense of urgency to reconnect and mend what had been broken. I had envisioned a different outcome when he arrived. I had hoped he would approach me, reach into the car, pull me from my seat, and wrap his arms around me in a comforting embrace that would convey love and understanding. Instead, he chose a different path. He walked around to the passenger side of the vehicle, opened the door, and settled into the seat, creating a physical barrier between us. The next hour unfolded with a series of conversations, during which he gave me the space to express my innermost thoughts and feelings without interrupting, allowing me to voice my regrets and confusion. Once I felt I had shared everything weighing heavily on my mind, he calmly articulated his feelings. He stated clearly that cheating was a deal breaker for him, a line that I had crossed, which meant our relationship was effectively over. Although he expressed a desire to remain civil, he made it abundantly clear that he wished to sever any further ties with me. I pleaded for another opportunity to prove my commitment to him and to our relationship, but my requests fell on deaf ears. He remained resolute in his decision, unwavering in his stance. As our conversation began to wind down, I was confronted with the harsh reality of my situation. I asked him where I would go after moving out, fully aware of the financial limitations that would make renting an apartment in the city infeasible on my own. He responded with a practical outlook, stating that I would need to figure that out for myself, but he did offer a small lifeline. He assured me that he would provide a check for his share of our shared expenses for 1 month, giving me a modest starting point to begin anew. Despite my desperate pleas for reconsideration, he remained firm, repeating his unwillingness to change his mind. When I finally found myself at a loss for words, I mustered the courage to ask if I could hug him and share a kiss as a final farewell. He consented to the hug but refused the kiss, emphasizing the boundaries he wished to maintain. We embraced for approximately 10 minutes, holding each other tightly as a sense of finality lingered in the air. Eventually, he gently released me and turned to return to his office, leaving me alone in my emotional turmoil. Tears streamed down my face as I grappled with self-reproach and the profound sense of loss that enveloped me in the moments that followed. Now, as I reflect on the aftermath of our conversation, I find myself haunted by remorse regarding my actions. I grapple with questions that weigh heavily on my heart. Is there any hope for the future of our relationship? What steps can I take to rebuild the trust that has been irrevocably damaged? I want to emphasize that my infidelity was a singular lapse in judgment, and I am eager to connect with women who have navigated similar circumstances, particularly those who managed to salvage their relationships. My determination to win him back is unwavering, as life feels incomplete without him. I have found immense solace in the responses received thus far, and any future insights shared in this community have provided a sense of relief amidst my turmoil. The shame I carry about my actions is so profound that I cannot bring myself to discuss them with anyone I know. This community has become an essential support system for me, and I am truly appreciative of the understanding I have found here. In an update, I must report that time has passed, and many of you have inquired about my relationship status. I regret to inform you that my boyfriend and I have officially ended our relationship. Despite weeks of pleading for one more chance, it became increasingly clear that he would not reconsider. In a moment of despair, I decided to quit my job and return to my hometown, staying temporarily with my parents while I sought to regain my footing. The financial reality of living alone in the city became untenable, and I wanted to avoid the discomfort of working at the same company as Jay. Thus, I made the difficult choice to uproot my life and return home. I deeply regret that my actions led to this outcome, and I feel as though he has disrupted my existence. While I acknowledge the potential for a fresh start, the journey ahead is undeniably challenging. Finding a new partner may present fewer obstacles, yet discovering someone as extraordinary as my ex-boyfriend appears to be an insurmountable task. My grandmother often remarked that finding an exceptional man is akin to locating a diamond buried in a coal mine. She emphasized the importance of treasuring such a find, often stating that she believed my boyfriend was that rare gem, and that I was fortunate to have him in my life. Her words resonate with me now, as I recognize she was right about him. He appears to be thriving without me, excelling in his career, and has chosen not to reach out at all. Despite my efforts to connect over the holidays, sending several messages went unanswered, leading me to eventually cease my attempts. Currently, I find myself grappling with feelings of depression, but I have taken the important step of seeking individual counseling, which has proven to be immensely beneficial. As I confront the negativity that sometimes permeates this community, I want to challenge the notion that once a person cheats, they will always cheat. This belief does not hold true for everyone, and it certainly does not reflect my intentions moving forward. I can assure those who may doubt me that I will never find myself in a situation to betray a partner again. Trust in my commitment to change is something I hope to earn back as I navigate this painful chapter of my life. My counselor recently shared a significant observation regarding infidelity. Many individuals who cheat tend not to repeat their mistakes. This perspective offers a professional lens through which to view my own circumstances. I genuinely value the support and kindness that I have received from those around me during this difficult time. To those who have chosen to criticize my actions, I appreciate your input, even if it adds to my discomfort. That experience is now behind me. Let us move forward to discuss new aspects of my story. At the age of 22, I find myself in a tumultuous emotional space, seeking to reconcile with my 25-year-old boyfriend after a significant lapse in judgment. To provide clarity about the situation, I must express the deep remorse I feel after inadvertently betraying his trust. The weight of guilt is particularly overwhelming, not just because of my actions but also because some friends, perhaps out of misguided loyalty or concern, felt compelled to inform him of my indiscretion. Now, I am in dire need of guidance on how to communicate with him effectively and thoughtfully. A few days ago, I made a grave error within a relationship that had spanned 2 years. The burden of guilt has become increasingly heavy, making it difficult for me to focus on anything else. I had once believed that he was my soulmate. A part of me still clings to that notion amidst this chaos. Yet, as time passed, our relationship began to feel somewhat stagnant. We enjoyed outings together, and he often showered me with gifts, but an unsettling feeling of being undervalued began to creep in. The thrill and excitement that had once defined our connection seemed to fade away. After struggling with my feelings for some time, I decided it was important to discuss my concerns with him in hopes of rekindling the spark we once had. One particular evening, while out enjoying myself with friends, the atmosphere was lively, and the music coaxed me into dancing. It was a festive environment, and then a group of guys approached our group. Admittedly, I felt a hint of unease at the prospect of engaging closely with other males, so I maintained my boundaries diligently. After some dancing, we took a break and sat down to chat. One gentleman from the group, who was undeniably attractive and charming, asked me for my number. To discourage him without being rude, I provided a fake number. Yet, as fate would have it, another guy from their group engaged me in conversation. He shared that he had recently gone through a breakup, explaining that his former relationship had become monotonous and lackluster. In hindsight, I recognized that I should have curtailed the conversation there, but my curiosity got the better of me. I asked him what specifically had gone wrong, and he candidly expressed his desire for freedom. He emphasized how he appreciated the ability to meet other women without the constraints of commitment. I found myself revealing that I harbored similar feelings of restlessness in my own relationship. We ended up conversing for the remainder of the night, engrossed in each other's stories until my friends announced it was time to leave. Before parting ways, he handed me his number. During the car ride to my friend's house, the temptation to text him arose, and I impulsively sent a message stating that I would take an Uber home instead. In a moment of weakness, I chose another path and went to his place instead. Upon arriving, I was struck by the aesthetic of his home and the luxurious car parked outside. As our conversation continued, an undeniable connection formed between us, and before long, we were kissing passionately. This escalated further until we found ourselves engaging in intimacy. The thrill of the moment seemed intoxicating, and I fell asleep in his bed, caught up in the whirlwind of events. However, the next morning brought an avalanche of panic. I had not anticipated staying the night, and my boyfriend was desperately trying to reach me. I chose not to answer his calls, knowing that my silence would only deepen the deception. My friends, evidently concerned, even contacted my father to check on my well-being. Finally, I left the guy's place and reassured my dad that everything was fine, concocting a lie about my phone dying to mask the truth. Upon returning home, my boyfriend greeted me with concern, and I struggled to find an honest way to explain my absence. Unsure of how to lay bare the reality of my actions, I told him that I had simply fallen asleep at a friend's house. After taking a shower to collect my thoughts, I burst into tears, overwhelmed by the weight of my choices. As I tried to gather myself, he mentioned that a friend had messaged him, claiming to know I had taken an Uber home. It was then that he checked my phone and confronted me directly, asking if I had cheated. All I could do was cry and insist that I had not betrayed him, that I would never dream of such a thing. Yet, his silence was telling, filled with disbelief and hurt. I yearned to reach out and comfort him, but each time I extended my hand, he recoiled. Ultimately, he told me to leave, his frustration so intense that he contemplated calling the authorities. I walked away feeling utterly devastated, knowing the enormity of my actions had shattered our once thriving connection. Now, in the days that have followed, I find myself consumed with longing. He meant everything to me, and the emptiness of his absence echoes deeply within my heart. I have been facing significant challenges recently, struggling with essential aspects of life such as eating and sleeping. These struggles have affected my academic performance, leading me to skip classes I once prioritized. Furthermore, I have distanced myself from my friends, attributing the turmoil in my relationship to their influence. It is disheartening to realize that a single mistake has escalated into this overwhelming situation. As I search for solace, I wonder if anyone else has encountered a similar circumstance and whether there are ways to mend the fractures in my relationship or even win him back. A few days ago, I found the courage to return to our apartment, clinging to the hope that there might still be something left to salvage in our relationship. To my utter dismay, the apartment presented a completely different reality. It stood empty, save for my clothes and a few items of my own making. Walking into that space felt like stepping into a scene from a horror film. The warmth that once filled our shared home was replaced by a chilling emptiness, and the dampness in the air only amplified the sense of loss. Every piece of furniture that had been carefully selected, every cherished moment encapsulated within those walls, seemed to have disappeared without a trace. I was confronted with the stark and painful reality that he had erased all remnants of his presence. Literally every possession of his was gone, leaving behind an apartment stripped down to its bare essentials. Even my laptop, a gift from him, was nowhere to be found, along with the food he had stocked in the fridge. I felt a rush of panic as I stood there, overwhelmed by the silence and the emptiness that surrounded me. The only item that remained in the refrigerator was a bag of pretzels I had bought for myself, a stark reminder of what had been lost. I instinctively reached for my phone, hoping for a sign of connection, and attempted to call him, but my attempts went unanswered. The shock of it all left me feeling abandoned and betrayed. How could someone do such a thing? Did he truly care so little for me that he could leave me in an empty apartment? It felt as if he had vanished from existence, leaving no trace behind. My mind raced with questions and uncertainty. I felt utterly lost and unsure of what my next steps should be. How could I possibly begin to make things right? Was this situation even legal? Given that we had both signed the lease, shouldn't I have been informed if he intended to break it? And what about my laptop? I was the primary user, and all of my important files were stored on it. I had to recover those files. That was essential for me to move forward. In an effort to reach out, I sent a message to my ex using a different phone number. The response I received was not what I had hoped for. He informed me that he had made the decision to end our relationship definitively and had already relocated. He advised me against searching for him. Although he had not yet officially terminated the lease, he made it clear that he had no intention of renewing it when the time came. He was adamant about keeping my laptop, claiming it was legally his since he possessed the receipt for it. When I explained that I only needed to retrieve my files from it, he callously mentioned that he had formatted the device and wiped all data from it. In a cruel parallel, he had erased me from his life in the same manner. At this point, I was left considering what actions I should take next. The emotional toll was significant, not to mention the practical implications of my loss. My life felt like it had unraveled before my eyes, and I needed direction on how to navigate this new and painful reality. The weight of unanswered questions and unresolved issues loomed large, and I sought clarity in the midst of turmoil. In a completely different narrative, I now starkly contrast my experiences to those of a 36-year-old man, changing names to protect identities. He shares his story about his ex-wife, whom we'll call Rebecca, now 34. They were college sweethearts who navigated the rigors of student life together and eventually tied the knot in their early 20s, he at 25 and she at 23. Their marriage initially showed promise, but it faced challenges that emerged as time went on. Though things started relatively smoothly, underlying issues began to surface. He was pursuing a demanding medical degree while she was studying accounting, leading to a dynamic that began to test their bond. Fast forward to 2016, when Rebecca secured a well-paying job as an accountant. This should have been a moment of celebration, especially since the company owner, James, was a friend from college. However, instead of a shared sense of growth and partnership, the couple experienced mounting tensions. Rebecca's grievances became more frequent and increasingly trivial. She expressed dissatisfaction with their living situation, criticized his actions, and even lost her enthusiasm for the meals he had once delighted in preparing. Despite being an excellent cook, her disdain for his efforts became apparent, and little by little, their arguments escalated. The emotional atmosphere shifted drastically, with insults and accusations flying. She would often belittle him, claiming that she earned more and implying that his contributions were insignificant. While many relationships endure rough patches, the intensity and vitriol of these disputes became harshly evident. If things had remained just within that scope of disagreement, this tale might not have warranted sharing. Yet, the evolution of their relationship took a darker turn, leading to events that ultimately unfolded into a narrative of betrayal and revenge that would reshape their lives forever. The turning point in my relationship arrived unexpectedly when I learned from our mutual friends that Rebecca and James had recently been spending time together. This revelation struck me as odd. Why would she choose to socialize with him, especially when I was not included in these gatherings? How could they hang out with our friends without my knowledge? Such questions gnawed at me, and I felt compelled to confront both Rebecca and James about the situation. They explained that their plans had been made at the last minute, and since I was out of town and occupied with work, it simply did not include me. While their explanation was plausible, a small part of me wondered if the plans had actually been established beforehand. Ultimately, I decided to let it go, brushing off my misgivings. The year 2017 marked a significant shift in my life, one that ultimately led to the unraveling of my marriage. As the year progressed, I noticed a growing sense of distrust and suspicion emerging within me. For those experienced in relationships, the feeling that your intimate life has suddenly diminished is a glaring warning sign. I became increasingly paranoid about Rebecca's behavior. Each time I attempted to initiate a discussion about our relationship, I was met with resistance. Admittedly, I was not at my best during this time. Frustration consumed me, leading to outbursts where I yelled at her, desperately demanding answers. It felt fundamentally wrong that the person I was closest to seemed to withdraw, spending less time with me and insisting that everything was fine. It was hard to accept that this state of affairs was normal. Our lives were supposed to be flourishing during this period. We had just paid off our student loans, and financially, we were reaching a peak. My friends and I had even brainstormed the idea of opening a small medical shop as a side venture. Among those friends was Saladin, who suggested that we celebrate our plans at a local pub. During this outing, I noticed a woman dancing with another man who bore an uncanny resemblance to Rebecca. Initially, it did not seem too alarming, but as I observed more closely, I realized it was indeed her, and she was dancing hand in hand with James. Although I tried to convince myself that it should not concern me, after all, they were just friends and colleagues, deep down, I felt unsettled. Feeling uneasy, I sent her a text inquiring about her whereabouts. Typically, she would be heading home around that time, but her reply stated she was already at home. In that moment, a major red flag flared up in my mind, growing so large and vivid that it felt as if it were practically waving in front of me. I told her that I believed she was lying, as the truth was clearly staring me in the face. Her response was one of paranoia as she backtracked and claimed that she was indeed on her way home. After that, she hastily left the pub. I followed suit, knowing that I needed to confront her directly about James. When I arrived home, I wasted no time in asking her face to face about her relationship with James. The look on her face was one of sheer shock, as if I had just summoned a ghost. Her reaction was not at all what I would expect when inquiring about a friend, and she began to mumble awkwardly, trying to deflect the conversation. Yet, as I listened to her words, the sinking feeling in my gut confirmed that something was seriously amiss. That night, driven by my growing curiosity and anxiety, I succumbed to the temptation of snooping through her phone. Although I knew this was not ideal, I felt an overwhelming need to uncover the truth. We had previously shared passwords, but I discovered she had changed hers, blocking my access. However, the following day during my continued search, I managed to figure out her new password. I understand how questionable my actions were, but my desperation to find clarity pushed me forward. What I uncovered on her phone was nothing short of devastating, a barrage of texts, numerous questionable photographs, and increasingly degrading comments. What struck me the hardest was her referring to James as Daddy. We had established a promise that transparency and open communication would be the bedrock of our relationship. Unfortunately, she shattered that vow. She had confided in him about the thrill she felt that night at the pub, and my heart sank further. One of the most painful realities was that we both had mutually agreed that if either of us felt bored or wanted to explore new dynamics in our relationship, we would communicate that openly. All of that was now shattered. I found it impossible to look at her in the same light anymore. That night, I went to bed, tears streaming down my face as I sobbed deeply into the night. In the midst of all this emotional turmoil, I contemplated devising a plan to retaliate against her, but I ultimately refrained. The flood of anger and hurt coursing through me was overwhelming. The next morning, I made the ill-fated decision to confront her without having any tangible evidence in hand. My accusations led to an intense altercation. She screamed at me, storming out and accusing me of being abusive and insane. That fateful afternoon marked a significant turning point in my life when my wife's friends, fueled by her narrative, created a messenger group dedicated to criticizing me. She had gone home and shared with them her claims that I was abusive, painting a picture of me that was not only inaccurate but also damaging. When she returned that night, the conversation took a devastating turn. She revealed that she had fallen in love with a man named James and was seeking a divorce. I suggested that we discuss this life-altering decision, but instead of a constructive conversation, it devolved into her berating me for reasons I never understood. In a moment of frustration, I raised my voice, and without hesitation, she called the police on me. When the officers arrived at our home, I was informed that for my own safety, I needed to spend the night elsewhere. Reluctantly, I went to stay at my sister's house. However, upon returning the next morning, I was greeted by the sight of James's car parked where my own vehicle used to be. The intention behind this display was unmistakable. Both Rebecca and James were deliberately thrusting their relationship into my face. Recognizing that I needed legal counsel, I consulted with a lawyer about the implications of our situation, especially since we had not signed a prenuptial agreement. To my dismay, Rebecca had already filed a complaint against me, alleging abuse, which created a precarious situation for me. Her actions and the lack of any attempt to apologize or rectify the situation began to weigh heavily on my mind. Our legal system, unfortunately, does not regard infidelity as grounds for fault in divorce proceedings, meaning she remained entitled to half of my assets despite her betrayal. The legal complaint she lodged against me loomed as a potential lawsuit that could impact my life further. In those initial days following our separation, I found solace at my sister's home, attempting to navigate the turmoil that had suddenly engulfed me. I reached out to Rebecca, hoping to discuss the situation, but she chose not to engage. Eventually, she sent me a text suggesting that we pursue a divorce. Such a significant conclusion to 12 years of companionship and 4 years of marriage was delivered in a mere message. The emotional impact of her decision was compounded by the realization that James had seemingly taken my place in her life. The first time I saw her after that, she handed me the divorce papers, solidifying the end of our relationship. Our circle of friends had already formed opinions based on her narrative, viewing me as the offender while elevating James to the status of her savior. Their belief that she had done the right thing by cheating on me only added to my sense of betrayal. By early 2018, we were officially divorced, and Rebecca didn't hide the fact that she was actively dating James during the processes of our separation. It became clear that she was thriving without me, while I was left grappling with the aftermath of her actions. My life unraveled quickly. I lost my job, my home, and a significant portion of my reputation. Several friends chose to side with Rebecca, further isolating me in this difficult time. This betrayal forced me to relocate to a new city in search of a fresh start. Saladin, a good friend, became instrumental in helping me rebuild my life. He helped me secure a job that, while less lucrative than my previous position, offered me a path forward. As I committed myself to the rebuilding process, Saladin and I forged an even stronger friendship. My romantic prospects dwindled as trust became a significant barrier for me. Communication with Rebecca ceased entirely, and the last I heard, she had moved in with James, seemingly happy. By the end of 2020, despite the global pandemic wreaking havoc on many lives, mine was beginning to stabilize and improve. Our pharmacy business venture flourished, and for the first time since my world had collapsed, I was earning a decent income. Unexpected news reached me through a mutual friend. James and Rebecca had broken up. The shock was palpable. Her so-called hero had cheated on her, leaving her abandoned with a child that was undoubtedly his. James had not only disappeared from her life but had also shown no interest in acknowledging his responsibilities as a father, neglecting to sign the birth certificate. Rebecca faced the grim reality of raising their child alone. I later heard through the grapevine that she attempted to date again but claimed she was still grappling with her feelings for both James and me. The audacity and complexity of her situation stirred conflicting emotions within me. While a part of me experienced a sense of satisfaction witnessing the fallout from her decisions, I also found myself missing her presence in my life, which led me to make a choice that some might find surprising. I sent her an email to check in and see how she was doing. To my surprise, she did not expect to hear from me. Our subsequent email exchanges allowed us to reconnect gradually after years of silence. This culminated in our first face-to-face meeting in 2021. The encounter was nothing short of shocking. The woman I once knew, vibrant and full of life, now appeared significantly different. She had gained weight and lost the charm that had once captivated me. The exhaustion etched on her face reflected the struggles she had faced since our split. As we spoke, Rebecca opened up about her tumultuous relationship with James, revisiting the old wounds of infidelity and deception. This exchange provided me with a measure of closure, offering a mix of relief and reflection on the complicated nature of our past. She offered a heartfelt apology, acknowledging that her actions had stemmed from a lack of clarity in her thoughts, especially regarding the pain she had inflicted on me. In her defense, she asserted that James had manipulated her perceptions, turning her against me in a way that was both deceitful and damaging. Ironically, even the sight of her stirred up a tempest of anger within me, igniting a fierce yearning for retribution. It was unmistakable that the consequences of her decisions had come back to haunt her. Life had not treated her kindly, and the toll it had taken was apparent in her current demeanor. Yet, I found myself wrestling with mixed emotions. Although her circumstances seemed to offer a form of poetic justice, it did not absolve me of my own missteps. The warning that had been issued at the onset of this tumultuous chapter loomed over us both. My thirst for vengeance was strong, and I resolved to follow through with it. I conveyed to her that I would consider forgiveness, but only contingent upon her willingness to reveal the truth publicly and restore my name. To her credit, she complied, even at the risk of alienating many of her friends. While my name was cleared, she was left to grapple with the fallout of her honesty, a burden that came with its own set of consequences. Despite her wish for us to rebuild our relationship, essentially asking me to step into the role of a father to James's child, I made it clear that any new beginning had to be taken seriously. I expressed my willingness to explore the possibility of starting over, but that would mean revisiting our relationship with the intent of dating with a clear purpose, leading toward marriage. Only then would I consider the legal adoption of her child. I had to admit, the child was endearing, and I had grown surprisingly fond of him, complicating my feelings even further. However, I found myself entangled in an affair that muddied the waters. I was involved with someone else, a woman named Lisa, who was Saladin's cousin. Our relationship flourished despite the geographical distance, as we navigated the complexities of a long-distance connection. I had previously informed Lisa about my situation with Rebecca, and she had expressed discomfort with my revenge plans, showing reluctance to assist me in my intense desires for retribution. Nonetheless, I managed to convince her of the necessity of my intentions. I acknowledged my need to see this through, and she eventually came around to supporting me. My relationship with Rebecca remained complicated by the fact that we lived in different cities. I never fully committed to moving in with her, although I played along by stating my frequent business travels, which inadvertently raised her expectations. The emotional manipulation that unfolded echoed the disappointment I had endured in my own past. We shared moments of intimacy, though we always ensured protection was used. Rebecca, in her state of newfound hope, believed she had rediscovered love in our connection. I encouraged her to seek therapy to confront her personal issues, which, to my surprise, seemed to enhance her overall happiness and well-being. Those around us noticed this transformation, often remarking on how much brighter she appeared. She regularly expressed her gratitude for the second chance she felt she had been given, accompanied by apologies directed at me for the pain she had caused before. Slowly, she began to replicate the gestures of love and care that had once defined our marriage, stirring a flood of memories and feelings I thought I had buried. Yet, with each moment we spent together, I found myself reconsidering the depth of my vengeance. The thought of delivering heartbreak in the manner I had fantasized began to trouble me. I contemplated the lasting impact it could have on her, the kind of trauma that lingers long after the initial wound has healed. Nevertheless, I fought with the memory of her betrayal, the vows exchanged that she so willingly broke. I reminded myself that while James was a terrible influence, she had made a conscious choice to hurt me. The deep sense of betrayal ignited a fire within me, reaffirming my resolve to press forward with my plan. As October approached, bringing Rebecca's birthday closer, life began to shift. With lockdown restrictions lifting, I seized the opportunity to make a bold move. I decided to invite Rebecca to go ring shopping, a light-hearted outing masked with underlying intentions. During our outing, she selected a ring that she adored, and I had it beautifully wrapped, anticipating the moment when I would reveal my true intentions. That evening, as Rebecca arrived at my home in tears, she repeatedly apologized for the pain she had inflicted on me in the past. Although she seemed genuinely remorseful, my heart had turned cold, leaving me with little but indifference toward her plight. When her birthday arrived, I took her to a location that held significant meaning for us, the very spot where we had exchanged vows. Surrounded by the beauty of nature, Lisa awaited us, and I prepared to unveil my plans. Upon our arrival, I introduced Lisa as my girlfriend, which caused Rebecca's complexion to drain of color. She was clearly thrown by my words, frantically trying to comprehend what I meant. In that moment of escalating tension, I clarified Rebecca's role in my life, referring to her as my ex-wife and friend with benefits. The air grew thick with tension as I knelt down and proposed to Lisa with the very ring Rebecca had chosen. At that point, Rebecca's composure shattered, and she erupted in anger, unable to contain her emotions. The scene was set for a confrontation that would forever alter our dynamic. I responded to her with a challenging question: how could she even expect us to reconcile after she had systematically destroyed everything that we had built together? It was abundantly clear to me that I could never bring myself to date someone like her again. Despite my firm stance, she kept pressing me, asking if everything we had shared meant nothing. In reply, I delivered a definitive and emphatic no. Our last moments together were not a celebration of what we once had, but rather a painful form of closure. I helped her confront the deep hurt she had inflicted upon me. At that time, Lisa, who was on my side, expressed concern for Rebecca's emotional suffering. However, I stood my ground and made it unequivocally clear that Rebecca needed to leave my life, and eventually, she did. Following her departure, Rebecca reverted to her old habits. She began telling everyone that I had cheated on her, thus casting me in the role of the villain in our story. This time, however, I managed to maintain my composure. The people around us became aware of her deceitful nature, recognizing that she had been the one to betray our relationship. She had cheated on me, and in doing so, she forced me to suffer a multitude of consequences, including false allegations of abuse that she had directed at me. Now, amidst the chaos of our broken relationship, she presumed I would take on the responsibility of raising the child conceived with her affair partner as if it were my own, while also considering a reconciliation. The last communication I received from her was in December of the previous year. In her letter, she expressed her apologies and regrets regarding the pain she had inflicted on me. She wished me a better life, and from what I gathered through mutual acquaintances, she had little to no interest in pursuing a romantic relationship. As for me, it was evident that things ended between Lisa and me as well. Our relationship was marred by various issues beyond just the fallout with Rebecca. Some people have gone so far as to claim that I am worse than my ex. I find that assertion perplexing. Could someone please clarify how I am regarded as the worst individual in this situation? I loved her deeply, yet she betrayed that love by cheating on me, which led to the loss of my home, my job, my reputation, and my circle of friends. In my response to her infidelity, I admit I acted poorly towards those around me. I gave her a taste of her own medicine by hurting another person emotionally. But does this make me worse than her? Yes, I may have emotionally injured her, but she had already done the same to me. I am not seeking judgment or approval. Rather, I am sharing my narrative of revenge, a story that some might label as nuclear revenge.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, and click on the little bell icon for notifications of new stories.